What is going on, guys? Grave here. Today I'd like to talk about subclassing and how a big topic in the community now is, will subclassing pretty much destroy class identity? Now, I know everyone out there is going to have their own opinions on subclassing. Some people like it. Some people don't like the idea of subclassing. Some people have different opinions on class identity. But I just kind of want to talk about this just in general because since the announcement of subclassing at the ESO Direct, it has been a very hot topic within the Elder Scrolls Online community. Now, personally for me, I feel like subclassing has some advantages, and I feel like it does have some disadvantages if ZOS does not handle it correctly. Overall, I understand what they're doing with this whole idea of including everyone in the game, whether you're a brand new player, whether you're a solo player, whether you're more of a trading, housing, or even a in-game score chaser, score pusher. They want everyone to have a place within the Elder Scrolls Online. And of course, subclassing is something big. I'm sure they wanted some big new idea or something different since they're going away from the large chapter zones to more of a seasonal idea now, which of course I'm sure in the next several years, seasons will look completely different than they do right now. But overall, I think they wanted something for their first real season to be kind of eye-catching, something that was different. And subclassing is definitely that. Now, I understand why people think that it's going to really get rid of class identity because let's say you're on a DK, yeah, you got to have one skill line from that DK, but then you can take some skill lines from some other classes. So it makes it feel like what's really the point of having maybe multiple characters, or what's the point of having, these other classes if that's what you really want to do. And I think a lot of it comes down to they want to kind of address that, where people over the years have said, I would like to have these different skill lines, because people have discussed that. I would like to have different skill lines from different classes. Why can I only run this specific set of skills on this character and not run something from another class? So I do understand why they thought this would be a really good idea. And I still think it has some potential. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play with to begin with, because if you're like myself, and I like to, when it comes to gear, not really have meta builds. I mean, a lot of the stuff I have, yes, I have the gear that is what you consider meta. And in my opinion, a lot of times, unless you're really going for something like some crazy score pushes, does not even matter, because you're looking at a 2 to 5% difference in your damage. If you have a really good rotation with meta gear and non-meta gear, you're not going to see a massive enough difference unless, like I said, you're doing something for some insane stuff in game, like in trials. Like I said, a score push. But for just normal everyday things, dungeons, vet dungeons, regular trials, you're perfectly fine. And that's kind of why I've liked to always go with off-meta stuff, off-meta abilities, or off-meta sets, and try to make them work. And that's why I think this is going to be really interesting to me, because the theory crafting is going to be insane. The only issue I do have, and I will say, is kind of like when the new hybrid idea came into the game, to where your magic characters now are using daggers and medium gear instead of like they did a long time ago when the game was first released. I'm not sure if all of you played then, but your classes were set to stamina was using, axes, daggers, swords, whatever. Tanks were using sword and shields, and your magic classes were using staves. So it went from that to magic classes now running dual daggers and medium gear just to get enough damage out, or more damage out than you would if you ran, your normal light gear setup with a staff. But over time, I feel like the class identity has kind of gone on a downward slope, or kind of downhill anyway, because of the hybrid idea. And it did make, if you are an in-game player, and I know all of you out there are not, but if you're a trials player, it didn't make a lot of the classes feel everybody's the same. Yeah, you might be on a Templar, or you might be on a Necro, or you might be on a Sorcerer, but everyone was running the exact same gear and the exact same weapons with the exact same skills if they were going for a really high score push in a trial. Now, when it comes to dungeons and normal trials and just, going out and soloing stuff, you could do whatever you wanted. And I'm guessing ZOS sees that a lot of the community really is to that part of the game where they're doing their own thing, playing dungeons. They're not really score pushing for trials. And so to me, when they first introduced the hybrid idea, I felt like, yeah, that was made maybe not necessarily for in-game players that are really wanting to do some crazy things in game, but they had the option to, make all their classes look just alike. Everyone in the group's going to have the same stuff on, but everyone else, the big majority of the people that play, that maybe don't play trials will have options to run anything in game. And that's always been one of my big complaints. There's so many gear sets in the Elder Scrolls Online that are not even used anymore. And some of these have been really great in the past, and some of them have not. So class identity has kind of fallen off, to me a long time ago. And I do feel like if they can find a way to make all these gear sets and all these skills usable again, I really do think subclassing could be something very unique. I'm also kind of curious what subclassing is going to look like going forward. Well, for example, and I've seen a lot of people talking about this, you can use subclassing. You can use different skill lines from different classes and combine them. But if you decide, let's say, for example, you have a Templar and you don't want to use different subclasses, you want to use just what the Templar has to offer, you actually get a bonus to running just those Templar skill lines. So, for example, maybe sweeps would do more damage. Maybe your channeled focus or your anything that you can do. If you're a healer, you're a tank, everything that you have available to you within that Templar class, those skill lines would actually deal extra damage if you have all Templar class skill lines equipped instead of having skill lines from other classes. Because we all know what's going to happen, most likely, unless all the skill lines are evenly balanced, which has been a hard thing for ZOS to do forever. Everyone's eventually, after a couple months, going to find the skill line from this class, and this class that you can combine on a DPS character, for example, and it's going to be the most damage in the game, and that's the only way you're going to get it. So then 4, 5, 6 months down the road, or when new players come in a year down the road, if that does not change, everyone, once again, is going to be running the same gear, same weapons, same skills, if they're wanting to go for your, quote, meta build. Now, there's a lot of players out there like myself that come into the game, don't necessarily have to have that. But for new players, they hear people talking about these builds, look on YouTube, look on Twitch, whatever, and they see these meta builds, and they think that's what they have to have. They don't realize there's other options out there that give them really good stats and damage and things as well, or more things that are interesting to play around with. But overall, I'm wondering if subclassing, to me, like I said, it may hurt class identity. In my opinion, class identity was already kind of destroyed to begin with. Not really destroyed, but not really a thing like it used to be a long time ago. I think overall, subclassing can be done in a very unique, fun way. I'm just curious if it's going to get stale 5, 6 months down the road if there's not a lot of changes to it. And that's going to be one thing I think ZOS is going to have to stay on. Will there be too much damage to begin with? Will it break some dungeons? Will it break some trials? They'll have to tone it down. Or can we look at a way in the future, like some people have suggested, to give people bonuses for running their own skill lines and sticking to that one particular class of skill lines instead of branching out, but at the same time, make branching out worth it, because you don't want people to go back to just running, like I said, the base skill lines from that particular class, because you're going to get bonuses and then look at subclassing and say, well, it's pointless. Because we've had things like that in the past in the game as well, where you get all of these, new things brought in, and then the old things that you used to use are not even viable anymore. Or they buff the older things and they're viable and the new things are not. Same thing kind of with gear and all that. So leave me a comment with your thoughts. I know I've rambled on a little bit, but it's just an interesting kind of a conversation topic that the community is having about subclassing hurting class identity overall. Like I said, I feel like class identity has kind of been hurt for a long time, and I think ZOS can, with subclassing, maybe make a new identity for classes in general with, this new way we're going forward. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and of course, if you liked it, hit the like. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.